This is Protected Thoughts from the Intellectual Property Team at McBrayer. This is an overview of state or federal law and regulation and does not constitute legal advice. Services may be performed by others. For more information, visit McBrayerFirm.com.
Welcome to Protected Thoughts. We are here today for a special episode in honor of Distillery Month. We have our marketing director, creative director, Brian Powers here with us.
Hello.
Bruce.
Good afternoon.
And I'm Mari-Elise Paul, and this is Protected Thoughts.
So what I want to talk about today is how distillers can use a legal strategy as a growth tool. So sort of the idea, if they think of law as part of their business strategy, what then becomes possible? So with regard to IP and how IP works for hospitality law and the distillery, industry, when done well, how do regulatory compliance and IP strategy create opportunity for distillers?
Oh, we're starting with the tough ones right out of the gate, Brian. Okay, well, we always say that you should think of your legal strategy as a business opportunity rather than something that is holding you back. And we like to work hand in hand with our businesses that we have the opportunity to work with our clients, and we like to come in early so that we can learn as much about the business as possible and we can help businesses achieve their goals right out of the gate. So if we are brought in too late, then we are kind of playing whack-a-mole sometimes with legal issues that pop up versus if we're brought in right when plans are being formed before that liquid even hits the barrel, so to speak, we can help the businesses to develop a strategy that achieves the goals of where they're going, the markets where they want to launch, and get those names locked down that they want to sell the bourbon under.
So I guess, do you see distillers, maybe in other businesses, sort of unintentionally limit their growth because of early legal decisions?
I think so. And Bruce, you might have something to add to this, but sometimes, dollars, of course, are limited. And so you're trying to make smart financial decisions, or you might think that, hey, we're just going to see if this works. And so you think a handshake deal is the best way to go, or we'll deal with this IP down the road rather than getting out ahead of it and clearing trademarks or making sure that you have agreements in place that really protect your IP from the start and that you own your trademarks, you own your copyrights before you launch into business. So we'll see, for instance, sometimes companies, distillers will come to us after they have sold bourbon under a trademark and they've gotten a cease and desist letter from another company that had prior rights in a trademark. They've already launched under this trademark. They didn't clear it, but now they have to rebrand. If they would have taken the steps in the first place to make sure that that trademark was clear, was protectable, and wasn't stepping on someone else's toes, it would have been a smoother and ultimately less expensive process.
So legal planning can expand your options rather than just avoiding risk, basically.
What do you think, Bruce?
I guess what lawyers can do when they're helping plan the branding, helping plan the trademarks, helping plan the sort of launch, is we can invite the client to dream big in a way that maybe they're not thinking about. So what we as trademark and copyright lawyers frequently deal with is we receive a finite project, a finite plan. I'm going to launch this bourbon brand, and I have this name, and I'm in love with this name, and this is what we're going to do. Please go trademark it. Well, the answer is yes or no, depending on whether or not that trademark's available. But if we are invited to the sort of the thought process of what are you trying to do, big, long-term, big picture, are you really launching a bourbon, or are you launching a bourbon adjacent product? Are you launching a wine, for example, or some other drink that's using bourbon barrels? Are you wanting to expand there? There are lots of other considerations that we can think about up front. We can help you think about up front that may help put into focus whether or not this brand that you're in love with is really going to be the best brand 5-10 years from now if you are on the trajectory that you hope to go and in the markets that you want to be.
Right. And I think, piggybacking on that, what you may think of as a really good mark that you're very in love with is something from a trademark perspective that might not be the strongest mark. And we're here to gently guide you and help you in the right direction. And, we want to be seen as your partners, not an obstacle, but we want to put you on the right path to success and help you develop a good, strong mark that works not only in the United States. Ultimately, obviously, the goal is for many distillers to launch successful products worldwide. So we want to help you think about the U.S. and beyond early.
I think what often gets lost in the lawyer jokes or the impressions that lawyers are just overhead or really is expensive is that we get pretty excited about this stuff too. We enjoy being part of a team. We are invested in this stuff because we like being part of the brand. It's really cool to be at a bar, look on a shelf and say, I had something to do with that brand, or I had something to do with that bottle design or that copyright, or our distribution folks or our licensing folks, I'm sure have the same feeling. So yes, we are a professional service and we cost money, but we are also human beings who give us a chance. We are always as excited about helping you with these plans and these projects as you are.
So you said something about that, getting excited about working with bourbon products and seeing clients' products on shelves. I will say one of the coolest experience I had as a lawyer was with our colleague, Jack Wheat. And Jack is, just the grandfather of bourbon IP work. Honestly, he is. I learned everything I know about distillery bourbon work from Jack. And he has this client that he works with, Peerless. And when Peerless launched and opened its doors, we went to that opening. So he worked with them on their relaunch of the product from day one. And they were doing moonshine tastings. And this is when I was, young and spry back 15 years ago. It wasn't that long ago. But yeah, that was one of the coolest experiences. And so to see where the product has grown today, it's really exciting.
So when you're talking about these brands and talking about seeing them on the shelves later, how might early naming and maybe labeling and design choices affect the future possibilities and expansion of those brands?
Early design choices and protecting those rights expands your options because you know that you have a good, protectable, strong trademark early. Or if you have a bottle design that's protectable, it allows you to protect those rights. And it also allows you to keep others from copying. So when you have a product that becomes really popular, everybody wants a piece of it and everybody wants to copy it or do something that's coming right up to the edge of what is okay and what is not legally okay. So the sooner that you legally plan to protect your marks and you register your trademarks, you register your copyrights, the more you are protecting yourself for down the road and you're giving yourself the ability to send your cease and desist letters if you need to down the road. And also you're thinking about if you ever want to sell your business, you're lining up your due diligence right away. Bruce, I guess you might be the best person to talk about when things get contentious.
Maybe, but I have another answer that's a little more simplistic than your answer. When I'm looking at bourbon on a shelf and I'm thinking about, gosh, I have this client that came to me and they're wanting to launch this product. What do we want to do to make our product stick out? Well, the answer is make it stick out. When we have people come to Kentucky, yes, they know all of the named bourbon brands, but Angel's Envy made a mark because of its bottle. Peerless, the brand that you mentioned for Jack, it's got a different bottle. Obviously, people know Maker's Mark. There's a famous trade dress case involving the red wax. And so I think when you're sitting at a bar and you're looking at the 42 bottles of bourbon that for folks like me have poor eyesight and they all sort of look the same, you're looking for the bottle that's different. You're looking for the markings that are different. It's not I don't know if it's our client or not, but like something like larceny, it's a different name. It's a different, bottle shape. And so I just think that from a branding standpoint, bourbon has a certain look, it has a certain style, but you can show some color in the brown drink, and we can help you achieve that. Maybe you don't have the money for that. Maybe that's a little too grand, and you have access to bottles that aren't that exciting, but we can help you plan. Are you going to start with this and then move into something else? Or we can file your trademark now or your trade dress now for the bottle that you have, but we can do intent to use on designs that you might want to do in the future. So if you let us know about that now, let us know about those distinctive ideas that you have now, we can explore all of it. And maybe ultimately being exotic in that way is more achievable than you think.
Yeah, Bruce, so what happens when things go sideways? So, you've started your brand, you've got it off and running, but then suddenly there's an issue with your IP. What happens then?
Well, it can go two ways. One are, if these are small bourbon brands frequently, and they get up, the owners and the distillers and the creative types, they get up in the morning and they look on the website and they search bourbon and they say, is anyone else out there stealing or mimicking or trying to free or copy off of our bottle or our script or anything that we're doing? And we may be representing the company that's doing that enforcement in that monitoring. We call it monitoring. And in that case, they call us and they say, hey, we've got a copycat on our hands, or, hey, I found this website that it's just like our website, but they've added an S to the end. So it's something Bourbons instead of bourbon. Can we do anything about that? And the answer is yes. We can figure out who that company is. We can figure out who that website owner is, and we can send letters to them. We can, strongly state what the law is and let them know that we mean business and that this design and the ideas behind our design and the lettering and the script and the name and all of that stuff is extremely valuable to us, and we will take the next legal steps as needed. Sometimes, unfortunately, we're on the other side of that. We receive cease and desist letters from companies that are that claim that we're doing that. We're the copycats, or our domain name is a little too close to the others, or maybe I created the Paul family distillery and the Paul line of bourbon, and I didn't know there was already a Paul in existence sometime way in the past. I might not be allowed to use that even though it's my name. So we are always we're always engaged in these back and forths, whether we're on the offensive or the defensive. And, sometimes we have bad news for our clients that there's really, we can fight the fight, but it's probably going to be a losing fight. And so we come up with other creative solutions to help figure out a step forward, because we understand that they're interested in making the bourbon and making money and growing their business and not paying lawyers. So that's our job.
All right. So now when we talk about we've talked about starting up a little bit, but as distillers grow and expand their brands, what legal choices then start to matter more?
I was meeting with someone yesterday, and I told them that, they're in the very infancy stage. They've received some startup money, and they've got a launch date of January 1, 2027. And so they're trying to figure out everything that they have to do. And, they came to me because of the branding aspect, but they also have a whole host of other questions that they have. And they said, just candidly, I have all this stuff I need to do, and I don't really know what comes first and what comes second, what comes third. And I told him that, we work at a full service law firm. And if you come into McBrayer, the 24th floor, and walk around the hall, you will meet my wife, Mari-Elise, and she will pull you in and she will say, branding's the most important thing. You got to do that first. And then you will meet Jack Seifert, our partner, who's a corporate guy, and he will pull you in and say, well, no, but you've got to get the corporate governance, the documents all set. What are you going to be? What are you going to do? And so the reality is it's all true. It's all true. Branding is an important first step because you got to figure out who you are and what your pitches are going to be when you're selling your product and trying to get money. But then once it's up and going, those sorts of initial branding things are less important, and you're going to be communicating with Mari-Elise or folks like her about what we want to sell hats and shirts with our branding on it. Can we get a trademark in that? We want to do other things with this brand. We want to move into other sorts of cocktails. And so the branding element's always going to be there as new ideas and new developments come up. There's going to be all sorts of interstate commerce stuff that happens because the more successful you are, the more places you're going to distribute the product, the more, the more applications, the more regulations you have, and then you're going overseas, you're going to have tax issues. So as you grow, you're going to have lots of more legal needs. Those are good problems to have.
Yeah, I think knowing what you don't know is important. And so having a team of lawyers to guide you and help you make the smartest business and legal decisions is important. And so like Bruce said, you can walk down the hall and find us talking with each other about, hey, how do I help my client do this? Or I'm looking at this agreement and I could really use your input on this provision. What do you think? So, the collaboration of working with our colleagues on problem solving for our clients is a perk of the job, but it's also something that we advise our clients to be aware that there are always things coming down the road, and be aware that you don't know what you don't know.
So what is important when you're starting out, when you're starting a brand for a distillery? What is an important element of your legal strategy at that point? What's important to know starting out?
I think it's important to know, Bruce touched on this, business formation, and we have a colleague that will always try to loop you in and say that's the most important. But really, when you're signing agreements and that involve your intellectual property, making sure that you do own the intellectual property and making sure that you do sign an agreement relating to your intellectual property. We really see a lot of handshake deals and, somebody that I knew did this, we're friends, and so it's fine. But then down the road, it's not fine. It's really hard for people to sort of claw back the rights or take what they feel they rightfully own down the road, get the designers, the creatives to sign things over to them when something's very successful that they've created. It's human nature to kind of want a piece of that, or say, oh, I actually didn't agree to give you that down the road. So it's very important to clearly define who owns what and paper that deal from the beginning to make sure that whatever you move forward with, you own.
Is there a way that brands unintentionally limit themselves at the beginning?
I think that brands unintentionally limit themselves by not protecting their intellectual property, both in terms of clearing and searching their trademarks, protecting their copyrights, their bottle designs, their labels, not properly papering their agreements. And then down the road, when they look to expand, whether it be into a new jurisdiction or, launching their product into a new market, or whether it be to sell their business or get investors, they aren't able to go through a clean due diligence process. And it could be that they find they don't own the rights, or they find that they can't get the rights, and it either entirely blows up the deal or it's very expensive to get what they think they rightfully own.
I think companies limit themselves by falling in love with their brand before they've done anything else. Because if they fall in love with the brand, then, and they may have done a Google search and said, yeah, I don't see anyone using this brand and exactly what I'm doing. And then they run with it, and then they shop it around, and then they get some investors, and then they hire a marketing department to mark up some bottles or some labels, and then when they're ready to hit the road, maybe they're doing small batch. In the bourbon industry, there's a lot of small batch sales, so they're limited runs. So sometimes we get calls from clients that say, there is a limited auction happening in Connecticut of these 200 bottles. I don't think that this is a real thing, but is this? And those companies are sometimes the copycats, and they're just doing their limited runs to see if they're popular, and then they're going to try and run with it. Well, if those companies have a really good, successful limited run, then they're ready to take on the world, but they've fallen in love with a brand that they can't market in the world. So to Mari-Elise's point, she speaks in terms of clearance and trademark idea. Clearance is usually the word, but the reality is people fall in love with their brands before they're ready to do anything else, and before they bring anyone in who can do a fulsome search of whether or not they can actually run with that brand. And that is really limiting, because then they've invested so much money, and they're going to invest so much time on lawyers to defend this brand that is just sort of a psychological, thing that they just need to get past, because they can be doing great things with a great brand that's going to be more successful if they just get off their quote unquote good idea.
Well, I think to that end too, they'll say, well, I did a Google search, or I looked on the USPTO website, and while we certainly respect that Google search, we have this special software and we're trained to look for these things. And so there's a reason that you're paying skilled lawyers to do these searches, to give you the advice that helps you get over these little hurdles. And we aren't trying to be adversarial. We're trying to help you launch forward with a good brand for your good bourbon.
Yeah, we always say we appreciate our role in this. We don't have a vote. We're not going to tell you no. It's your brand. It's your business. You get to go do whatever you want. But we're the folks that are trying to help you maximize your spend in successful ways, not in unsuccessful ways.
So, Mari-Elise, you and your colleague Stephen Amato, who is the chair of McBrayer's Distilled Spirits Service Group, recently sat down for a conversation with the president of the Kentucky Distillers Association, Eric Gregory. So here's a portion of the conversation where they discuss some of these issues from a hospitality law standpoint.
Distilleries move in their own time, and change to them is prohibition, right? Even though it's getting close to 100 years ago, but distilleries really don't like change very much. And so how important is it for them to be proactive in all this at the very beginning of discussing their legal strategy, instead of being reactive, which is what you would think most of us would be. You're not going to need a lawyer until somebody calls you or sues you or something like that. And can you talk about that for a little bit?
It's critically important, and it goes to what you do at the very inception of a relationship with someone who comes to us and wants to get in the distilling business or the brand business or whatever. It's a really good conversation on the front end. Mr. Distiller, Mrs. Distiller, what is it that you want to do? Do you have just a single product? Do you want to be a contract distiller? Do you have some legacy granddad's recipe you want to build? What is it you want to do? Do you want to just be a production distiller, or do you want to have on-site retail? Just need to understand that, because if we understand that, then we can develop a legal strategy to seek the correct type of licenses, to make sure they understand what it takes to qualify for those privileges, and just be thinking about what their goals are, and let us help them use the law to get there, rather than we just dive into this project and find out, oh, they want something totally different. Well, we
Right.
should have done this instead of that.
And I think it's important too, because most people think, oh, the attorney's just going to tell me no. No, you actually say, may not be able to do it this way, but we're going to find a way to work with you to make happen what you need to happen.
Yeah,
Right?
and further to what we were talking about a while ago, sometimes we can slightly alter their business model to meet the objective they want and still be compliant. And sometimes we run into a brick wall and we can't do anything about it. That's when we call our friends in government relations
Yep.
and say, what is the smallest, least apparent change that we can make in the law to achieve this client's business objective?
You not only want to look at what you're going in currently, you probably want to look at what the area around you is for expansion opportunities, or you may have complaints or concerns from neighbors that you're going to have to legally address.
Right. You've got to look 5 years down the road. Is what I'm building here at this location going to be good enough? Am I going to need a parking lot? Am I going to need a small rick house? Do I have the opportunity to go farther beyond the confines of what I've started with? So yes, take a look at that and make sure that if you want to expand, you're going to be able to, whether it's under the land use codes or the environmental codes or housing, building, construction, etc. And you also want to be looking around for potential obstacles.
Right.
A church, a school, somebody that may not be real interested in the type of industry you're involved in and who may use that opportunity to attempt to block you.
Yeah.
It's important.
When distilleries first started in Kentucky 200 years ago, most of them were out in the hinterlands near a water source, right? And communities and things actually came down towards them. Now we've got very rural distilleries, we've got urban distilleries, we've got downtown distilleries and tasting rooms, and all the regulations and everything are different for each one of those types, right?
A very, very complicated mosaic of things that you got to take into consideration before you choose a spot and commit to funds to buy it or
And-
rent a piece of property.
or rent. And something else you touched on that something y'all offer and very few law firms do anymore these days is the government affairs side, the government relations side. And I'm sure that's important from a legal standpoint because they keep track on what's happening in the legislative session, what's happening locally with ordinance changes and things like that. And so, like you mentioned, if you have a client that's running into a problem, you can access your government relations team to help you kind of sort through that.
That's right. It's a great advantage to our clients, and I'm the first to tout that.
You're preaching to the choir here,
Really,
so.
it's a unique advantage that we have, and I'm proud of that for two reasons, and you've mentioned both of them. One is our ability to anticipate what's coming down the road, and our ability to project to clients, hey, this is something you're going to need to pay attention to because this is coming, and let's take the time now to plan for it. But the second piece of it is, once in a while, the ability to use the government relationship to fix a problem, whether it's a text amendment, whether it's a tiny tweak to a statute that opens up a door for some clients. We've done that on multiple occasions over the years, and it is something that we're able to deliver that some others are not.
And there's so much gray area in alcohol law that you're really in there sometimes, arguing about the law that maybe hasn't been changed since 1960, right? In today's alcohol industry versus back then when a lot of these prohibition era policies were adopted, we're two completely different things.
Yeah, and that leads to a lot of discussions with clients about, do we want permission or do we want forgiveness?
Right.
And it's a constant battle to try to determine what's really the best route here. And it's a case-by-case basis, of course. But
And y'all got great relations with the legislature, but you've also got great regulatory relationships, especially with the ABC and things like that. And I know that's something that
it's absolutely
it
essential.
could change every 4 years, right? So you've got to have some consistency there, and that's where y'all step in.
You've got to have a great relationship with the regulators, and every bit of that is built on trust and transparency.
Yep.
We're assertive with the regulators. We go and we meet them. We tell them what we do, how we go about it. We think we're consistent and deliver consistent quality applications and responses to enforcement matters. But transparency that builds trust is absolutely invaluable. If you don't have that, you really are going to have a hard time representing people in the alcoholic beverage industry.
Well, and one thing I appreciate that you guys do, you go to a lot of national conferences and things too, with ABC administrators or legislators and stuff, and you're always talking about people around the country. And sometimes we hear stuff that y'all working on in other states. We're like, hey man, we could use that here, in Kentucky as well, because the competition for distilleries over the past 10 years or so has really heated up, right?
It is. It is. It's like it's not unique to the distilling industry. It's not unique to the legal industry. Relationships are really, really important no matter what you're doing. And you've got to continue to work hard on building new ones and maintaining existing ones if you're going to be able to deliver the type of services that our clients want us to have.
So the KDA, we created the Kentucky Bourbon Trail in 1999. It's one of the things that we're most proud of. We get nearly 3 million visitors a year now from all over the world. How has that changed and evolved in a lot of the things you guys do and offer with clients? Because now you're not just dealing with a distillery that's a manufacturing plant. You're dealing with a restaurant on site and a bar on site and all these different things too,
And
right?
lodging.
Yeah. Concerts.
Lodging, transportation, live entertainment, all of those things, which bring with them a whole new host of considerations that a small craft distillery in and of itself with maybe a little retail just doesn't involve. And so just more questions to answer, more hoops to jump through. Going back to what Mari-Elise says, the sooner we get in and understand, you want a hotel distillery, got it. That's a different kettle of fish. We got to approach it a little differently.
Okay, Bruce, I'm going to ask some fast questions related to bourbon and distilling, and you're going to answer them. Ready?
No.
Yeah, let's do it. It'll be fun. Okay. Coffee or bourbon?
Am I allowed to say coffee, or do I need to say bourbon?
You can answer honestly. This is why it's fast and honest.
Coffee in the morning, bourbon in the evening.
Okay. If you could sit down with any Kentucky distilling legend, who would it be?
Like Chris Morris, of course.
Oh, good answer. What is one thing you've learned from working with the distilling industry that applies to life in general?
Drink with caution.
Good things come with age.
Not so much.
Lightning round. Neat or on the rocks?
I'm the pretentious person that has the big single cube. So kind of one rock.
I would say neither. Cocktail. One thing Kentucky does better than anywhere else.
Horses and cocktails.
All right. Thank you for playing. We have enjoyed participating in Distillers Month, and it was great to have you here with us, Brian.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
I hope you can join us again soon. Remember, we are lawyers, but we're not your lawyers. We just love talking about the law. We will see you back here next time on Protected Thoughts. There have been lots of exciting developments in the court, so stay tuned for those updates and check us out on McBrayerFirm.com.
All content copyright 2026 McBrayer PLLC. All rights reserved.